This meeting is being recorded.
Hooray! Right. Thank you very much, and thank you. I'm getting a. This is a new platform which I haven't used for these meetings before. Was it easy for everyone to get in?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. Well, listen. Thank you very, very much, and welcome everybody. Adam from Albert. He's only got. He can only join us for the first part, so I thought it'd be really, really great if Adam wants to start up. He's standing in very valiantly for another contact. Who's the person? Is it Julie?
Sabrina
Sabrina.
has been leading the relaunch of the suppliers directory from our end. So I might, if you have any questions, I will try my best to answer them. But there might be a few that I have to defer and get back to the group on. But yeah, please let me know. But I'm happy to just jump in and give a quick update. And then,
please do, because you know Albert is supremely important to what we're doing. Just to give you a brief insight, you probably saw from the website. You know, we're a group of like-minded companies. We all want to help to spread best practice and decarbonize. We meet 4 times a year normally, and there was a great deal of excitement to begin with, during which time our industry has gone through a tumultuous tsunami, and we're all reeling from it. So it's actually quite interesting now that we're getting into 2025 to actually have the involvement of Albert, who has always been central to what we've been doing, but actually hasn't been part of it. So great that you're part of it. Over to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you for having me. So some of you may know that we used to have a suppliers list at Albert that was run previously. We had to close that down after a while. We realised that we didn't have the resource to dedicate as much as we wanted to it. It was a free service, as it were, that suppliers would get in contact. We had some criteria, and then some of the assistants on the team would go through those emails that had been sent over and then list the companies based on that. It wasn't as rigorous as we'd have liked, and it needed to be. So we put a pause on it while we redeveloped the project. And then since then, we've now come up with a much more rigorous process. Sabrina's developed criteria that are specific to different suppliers. So now it's paid for. The application, suppliers will pay for an application, and that covers both the application administration process. We also now use an external assessment team as well, who sort of add an extra check and balance into the equation, and then that also covers the listing for a year on the website and the accreditation and things like that as well. So that is sort of the update.
How many, just out of interest, how many people applied but weren't actually successful in being included?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, but what we really want to try and aim to do is not have that happen in many cases at all, because we've got a range of pre-screening questions on the form, so that if you're a supplier and you go through it, you know if you're not at the standard. Because what we don't want, especially given what you said about how difficult it is in the industry at the moment, we don't want companies who aren't going to meet the criteria to pay for an application if then they don't have what it takes to get on the list. So we are trying to minimise that as much as possible, and we also have built into the process a feedback loop. So there's a 1 round of resubmission. So where it is likely that a company is making it onto the list but doesn't demonstrate the criteria quite yet, we might just ask that they update a few things, and that could be a sustainability policy, or put together a few more bits of evidence to help them get them over the line. So yeah, the aim is to almost have a 90 to 100% pass rate, just so that we minimise any. We don't want people spending money that they can't. That doesn't then get them a place on the list.
Sure. Well, listen, on behalf of the group, we really, really welcome this new initiative. In fact, one of the last bits that we discussed in the previous meeting of last year is for us to actually set up our own type of supply scheme. So that's great to see. Lawrence, you have a question.
Yeah, hi. Also, really nice to meet you, David. I think first time I met. Quick question. Last time, obviously, one of the big discussions is, is a company sustainable based on actions they're doing kind of behind the scenes to, for example, decarbonize their own operations, or is it about kind of solutions that they offer, so low carbon solutions? And then where does it kind of, you might have a company who offers, they might rent out, let's hypothetically say, 60 diesel generators and they have 3 batteries. Is that company a sustainable company, yes or no? I'm just wondering how, under this kind of new framework, those kind of questions are being addressed. Because, I mean, we looked at doing a kind of a sustainable suppliers list a couple of years ago when I first started at Film London, and I dealt with a lot of those questions, and it's really tricky. So I'm just wondering, I'd love to know your thoughts on it. Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely. You broke up a tiny bit, so sorry if I don't quite get the question right. But I think in terms of, we want the suppliers list and directory to work for all suppliers who work in the industry, go from micro businesses to big suppliers, and it sort of maps our toolkit in the sense that we want to reward sustainable initiatives, even if they don't have, if the company doesn't have a huge amount of resource to put behind those initiatives. So it's definitely companies who have vision and can demonstrate that they're on a journey towards being more sustainable, rather than necessarily, as you say, a company guaranteeing they have a certain number of HVO generators or things like that. So, but having said that, there are different categories, and that was another key thing I think about the new directory. If you put that you operate in disposal or waste management, or if you put you operate in energy generation, then the criteria for that are different, because just based on what's needed and what's expected. And if it's in a hair and makeup team or something like that, we want it to be flexible, and we want it to work for both small companies and larger ones. So broadly, it's about vision, and that's why if you've been into the application at all, I know Barry, I believe you have, but there are questions on sustainability policies and what you communicate externally and things like that as well. So yeah,
it's very detailed. I was actually really impressed. I was also impressed that you turned us down the first time. We had to go through to answer some other questions and submit some other bits and pieces. So it was really good that you're not just taking answers for granted and going through. I'm actually really pleased. So, Sally, you've been through it. What did you think? You're on mute. Sorry. So, Sally, you're still on mute.
Sorry. Yes, I was doing it this week, and I've given Adam some direct feedback already, which is just things like it would be useful to be able to upload links rather than documents. It would be useful to be able to put more than one document for a particular category. All that. Great. I mean, it's just sort of logisticy things. I mean, I kind of had a slight question. I didn't realise that the cost was about the application rather than about the listing. So I just wonder whether or not for next year that might be worth a look, because I think that might put some small businesses off from applying, particularly if it's quite rightly, as I said to you in the email, it's a lot of work, and you should be able to demonstrate everything you're doing, and that's absolutely fine. But I'm wondering whether it makes sense to actually charge for the application, or whether it would make sense to load that cost onto the people that were actually listed, just because I think there are probably quite a lot of businesses that think, well, even that, for us, we're a 350 quid. It's not a lot of money, but it is money, and it's taken me, I'd say, a day, and that's not nothing. So I wonder if that just in terms of a business model, that might make more sense to load it onto the people who are listed rather than the people that are applying, because you want as many people to apply as possible. And then if they get through, 350 quid isn't a lot of investment, to be involved with you guys. but it might put people off if there are other things that they could do that are free. And we obviously want that to be useful to you, to be useful to us. This needs to be as comprehensive a list as possible. Thought.
Yeah, thank you. I'll feed that back to Sabrina. I'm not 100% sure on why that decision was made around but I believe part of it is because our costs are very much loaded on the application process. So that's just part.
But that doesn't actually, just with my marketing head on, that's not relevant. That's kind of not our problem. You see what I mean? It's like, of course you have to cover those costs, but you need to cover them in some way that makes sense for your clients, in this case, us. But no, I think it's a really good idea. I think, it's a perfectly reasonable level. I just think there are a few, obviously with all things, it's really hard to design a tool that speaks to all the different sizes and all the different kinds of businesses. So I think it's a really good, really, really good first stab at it. And hope we might manage it. So it's good.
Absolutely. Steve, you have a question.
Yeah, I actually didn't know anything had changed, and so I don't know how it had been communicated previously, but we, still have it on our email footers, and this is kind of the first I'd heard that anything had changed. And then just looking at the website now, us as a supplier have disappeared from the website. I don't know if you removed everyone and then started again, or how's it working? Because I didn't know we had to reapply or anything.
We had a couple of stages towards the end of last year for suppliers that were already on the existing listing. We offered an earlier entrance so that you could start a round early. We sent that out via email, but we have had a few people get back to say that the emails didn't reach people in the company, or a lot of people when they originally applied gave us an info@company address. That was the one that we then contacted out, and I think potentially some people have missed that application.
That's what happened.
We did. I didn't. Looking back, I've not had anything, I don't think.
So we're going to try and make sure now in the new form. I think we've got a few ways of giving a couple of emails, and you can have multiple people on the application. So we want to try and make sure that if anything changes or when it's time to renew, then we can make sure we reach the people in the company. But it's a shame you're not the only one who's had that issue. So yeah, we're gonna try and make sure we just reach out to more people in the companies.
Yeah, I mean, we've probably had productions that have asked us for green policies that have then gone for their Albert certification, and then I don't know if one of the questions was whether us as a supplier were Albert, but they would have put that because we told them that, I think. I mean, it's only been a month or two, so it's probably not been that recent, that bad, but
yeah.
Okay, so listen, Adam, thank you so much. I know that you need to get off now, but it's we're really, really pleased to have the involvement of Albert now. So that's great. We look forward to working with you in the future, and hopefully either yourself or Sabrina can join us in future meetings, and we can see how your plan develops.
Well, brilliant. Thank you for having me. And if you've got any more feedback or questions, just send me an email, and I'll feed back to Sabrina as well. It's a developing process, so we're definitely up for hearing anything. But thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
So, Sally, over to you. You've been super busy, and you've added some bits in the chat too.
Yeah,
so
I can't remember now what I put on there.
You got some funding for installation of new A++ rated.
Brent have been having a little bit of a moment around Brent and Camden together. There was some funding for energy improvements. As you all know, Barry, if you're quite good already, it's harder to get better than it is if you're crap to get quite good. So they all came round and looked at our heating and cooling, and we put in. In fact, actually, you recommended when we put in different what they call the fans in the warehouse.
The de-strap fans.
Because we were basically heating a lovely top bit of the warehouse. They're and not really people. Efficient. So yeah, we've put on that, and we've got AA rated heating and aircon in the office now. So that Brent and Camden are giving us, I think it's 50% or 45% funding or something for that. And there's quite a lot of really good sort of freebie seminars and stuff around that to do with, if you were, I think this might be quite a stretch for us in a minute, but, you know, B Corp and, you know, specific things. They're really focusing on energy rather than the whole piece. Mm-hmm. But it's a useful thing to be able to do. And then other than that, we are, as you know, I've kind of stepped back a bit from my doing everything job, which is an enormous relief, to focus on the sustainability project and the new website. And the new website will have a whole patch of stuff on sustainability, which will hopefully link with your stuff and, you know, the group stuff and all that kind of thing. So this is a big project, and we have got we've reorganized everyone into the teams that work. Everyone in Green Kit's focusing on an area, and all of us together doing this biodiversity project where we go to a pond in Brent and, you know, weed and help the Canal and Rivers Trust doing that. So it's, at the moment, it's really, I think for us, because we're quite small, I mean, I'm going to do the data, but it's really important for us to get the culture really well embedded at the level of, for God's sake, guys, please don't use tea towels to clean the equipment. There are a load of old T-shirts in the corner. I mean, it's all that really, really, really low text. They get very excited about coming and wading in the pond for 3 hours. But actually, it's the low-tech, boring, sort your bloody recycling that we absolutely need to focus on. And it's a small team, so it's reasonably easy. Mm-hmm. But I think that for us, we need to make sure we already are, as it turns out, in the space where our products are sustainable. And we, as I've said a couple of times before, we're looking at this reusable alternative to poly. The big project that Pat's involved in at the moment is we have bought an 80 kilowatt, now let me get the physics right, 80 kilowatt battery generator, which is a huge investment for us. Because we believe that lighting, you know, that basically electric generators is where the next step is going to be. So that we've got someone up in Dundee at the moment doing all the logistics, because we have to bolt it onto the back of a transport vehicle and all that kind of stuff. But we have actually had it on test last year, and people were able to run a small shoot for a whole day on the power, and then it could be recharged at a fast charging EV station in a garage. So it's a big deal for us, because obviously we're lighting focus, but this seems like a sensible next step. So once we have that in-house, we're going to invite everyone to come and have a look at it. We're going to just get as much information. Pat's in the process, he's just about finished it, of making a list. Lawrence and I've talked about this already, a list of all the available electric batteries that there are on the market. So if any of you guys know of anything that we should include, please drop me an email, sally@greenkit.london, because really we want all that stuff to be transparent. It's not about us owning it. It's about everybody saying, okay, these are the options. I've used that one and it works for this, but not for that, and practical real world things. So we were hoping we might have the battery in time for the BSC, so people can have a look at it then, but it'll actually arrive in March because there's a lot of logistics. So that's our big focus for this year.
That's great. Just out of interest, so 80 kilowatt, I presume you mean 80 kilowatt hours?
No, 80 kilowatt.
So what's the capacity?
I'll have to look at it. I have to look at it. But it is it's the biggest. It will be the biggest electrical batteries available in our industry at the minute. It's being used in events, and these guys haven't used it in film. So we're about to do all the data on that, and we obviously it needs to be used, and people need to give us feedback and all that kind of thing. But it's
it sounds brilliant. Sounds brilliant.
It's a huge beast.
Steve, over to you. Love to see you again. What up? Do you have anything to contribute, to update since the last time we've met?
Not huge amounts. I mean, we're trying to push our landlord to, and it's something that they want to do, is just remove gas from the building entirely. Sort of part funding to change everything to aircon. Most of it is aircon already, but they just want to lose some of the gas elements of it as well. And we're also trying to push for some electric vehicle chargers as well. Again, co-funded between us.
Excellent.
So at the moment, we're limited on the what the estate will allow.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
It might be worth your while. I don't know if you've thought about fitting solar, but I'm great advocate of that. It's worked really well for us here.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, lovely to see
Okay,
you
sorted
again.
my mic out. Yeah, great to see you. I guess over the last couple of months, been focusing on products to sell. So sustainable small batteries. I think that you've got lots of the Instagrids. I think they're amazing. Gonna see what feedback is on the Anton Bauer Eden at the BSC Expo on Friday. Take a few people over there, I think, and just get a hold of it, get a feel of it, and see if the feedback's good on that battery. Because I guess that sort of AC power, small AC power, I think will just keep getting bigger this year. Like Nanlux 2500 lights can power off a AC is pretty incredible. So I think what you've already bought into with AC power like that will just keep growing. So I want to try and offer that up. And I saw something cool the other day. It was a electric diffuser from Godox. Going to take a look at that on Friday at the BSC Expo. So it looks like you dial in how much diffusion you want. So it's like, looks to me on the video like a little 4x4 frame, and then you're dialing in how much diffusion you want. And
sounds brilliant.
I thought that looks really cool. So I want to check that out. I think they're going to have that there at the Godox stand on Friday. So going to look at that. So yeah, that's what I've sort of been focusing on recently, products we can sell which are sustainably focused, as well as the internal things. And hopefully this year we can kick off a little bit in terms of money coming in, so I've got more sway internally for a lot of the projects I want to do. So yeah, that's sort of what I've been up to.
Appreciate that. Dave, what do you have to add?
Very little new for us. We're still settling into the new building. Obviously, our biggest step was putting a solar array on the roof of the new site, which runs all our kind of day-to-day operations. It's 240 kilowatt, I think.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's massive. So that obviously makes a difference for anything we prep and anything we charge. We've got a dozen car charging points, which are not massively used yet. I think that will be a trend, but it was about provisioning for the future in terms of making the commitment to put them on the site. I would guess 2 or 3 of them are in use most of the time, which is obviously a good sign. But apart from that, no, just continual iteration for us. But our focus is sorting the site. Obviously, as you know, we've consolidated into one warehouse from 2. So a lot of the transport that we were using going between the sites historically, one was kind of long-term, medium-term storage and repairs and manufacturing. They're now all on one site. So it's a hidden saving in terms of that diesel burn going backwards and forwards from Waxlow to Perry Barrow. So it's a good step.
That's really good. I look forward to seeing it. That's excellent. And Lawrence,
David, could you mind? Yeah, I was just going to ask David really quickly. Do you have any battery storage with the solar array at the moment, or is it just strictly solar?
It's strictly solar.
Yeah. How are you finding that's kind of meeting your demands? Are you finding you're kind of selling back to the grid, or is that kind of generally supplying your facility?
Yeah, I think it's. We don't have any data on it yet. It's relatively early days. I think we need to let it go for probably another 6 months to see the site running normally, to get any of that out of it. But I doubt whether, with everything that goes on in our warehouse during the day, supporting the offices and obviously the little battery charging, which is done, and everything else, I doubt there'll be much overspill. Obviously, when we're doing testing and flashing and doing burning heads and ballasts, that can be a big power draw. You can be running a large HMI for quite a while, just burning it out and flashing up ballast. So, and obviously all of the pat testing going on all the time takes power. So a truthful answer is I think we need longer to see whether there would be a surplus there. That's useful.
Well, it's brilliant anyway. Well done. It's fantastic.
No, it's really good. I mean, certainly we found that all of the EVs that come in and all the battery charging, we burn much more power, obviously, when people are in the building, and that coincides with daylight, which is very convenient. But obviously, it's very early days for you because you've only you haven't long been in there, and you've got the nice bright sunny days to come. But
well, also Q4 wasn't normal. I doubt it was for any of us. So Q4 of 24 was not a normal operational quarter because it was so quiet. So I don't think you draw many conclusions from that either. I think we probably need to get into Q2 25 to really get a feel for how much we're using servicing jobs and charging vehicles and batteries.
Quite right. So over to you, Lawrence. You've been very busy as always. What do you have to add?
Hi, everyone. So I was quite keen actually to kind of run some thoughts by this group. People might not have ideas today, but I wanted to kind of talk to you briefly about next stages of the fuel project. So we've been kind of putting our heads together and exploring potential next projects. And we've got a kind of bunch of different ideas. Some of it's around kind of further kind of data analysis. So using some of the data that we gathered from the last round, and kind of doing maybe, for example, some more deep diving into over-speccing. So I think some of the data that we put forward in the last report around over-speccing kind of got people to take notice a little bit, but obviously it wasn't our kind of primary focus of that research. It was kind of secondary data that came out of what we were doing. So, we've got ideas around kind of doing a bit of a deeper dive and more analysis around that. We've got ideas potentially around electric truck trials for the sector. So whether we can kind of work with some of the vehicle manufacturers or one of the vehicle manufacturers to potentially trial some trucks within the sector, because we're starting to see then alternative sectors, and I think it'd be great for us to get some case studies and see whether that works for our use cases. So we've got a bunch of ideas of potential projects, and at the moment we are talking with some of our funders and partners from the last phase, who I'm happy to say look like they're, at least some of them, I won't put any names out there just yet, but are supportive of the project again for another round. So this is all looking very positive that we will have something else coming forward in the coming months. So I guess the reason that I wanted to flag all of this with you is obviously the whole fuel project has always been around trying to support suppliers such as yourselves around the transition, whether that be through data, whether that be through developing collaboration with producers, whatever that looks like. So I would love to hear from you all, if there's anything that comes to mind that you think could be of interest. I'm not expecting people to think on their feet right now, but if there was something, as I say, for example, one of the ideas is around power planning. So how do we support more accurate power planning so that we know that the generators we're providing, even if they're traditional generators or the hybrids, whatever, are appropriately sized. It could be around how could the sector, can we do a bit of a deep dive into funding opportunities, and that could be at kind of individual company level, that could be at the sector level. So we're kind of all ears at the moment about what the industry, and yourselves being an absolutely key part of that, think would be helpful, basically. So at the moment we're waiting to, I'm just trying to think. So you can contact me on email anytime and send me any thoughts that you might have. equally, what I'm wondering is potentially in the next few weeks, I might be able to share the projects that we've suggested with you in a bit more detail, quite light touch, but I could share those with you and collect any feedback that you have. I guess we just want to make sure that whatever we do is useful, basically, and is going to be helpful to yourselves and to the sector more broadly. So I think that's probably a little kind of summary. If anyone's got any thoughts now, feel free to let me know. But if not, I'd say I'm on email. Yes, please go ahead. Sorry, the names keep swapping around on this.
Okay, so
thing. I don't know if it's
Dave from Panama.
Nearly called you Barry.
Absolutely fine. So what we've been looking at vehicles and talking to manufacturers for 4 or 5 years, and the issue that keeps coming around and is not being resolved is payload.
Yeah.
And whatever we do, it just doesn't meet our requirements.
Yeah.
Vans are kind of okay for ASAPs and quick deliveries. Obviously, if you're just slinging your head on the back, that's fine. Yeah. But certainly for the heavy loads or most of our workload, they're just not appropriate for what we need.
Yeah. Okay, brilliant. Yeah, and we are aware of that. My understanding is that there's a few, for example, in the Luton space, that there are some new modules coming out this year that are matching payload. I think what we'd be keen to do, obviously, because obviously I'm sure you're aware that Alex Lewis-Jones, who is kind of one of the authors, co-authors of the Fuel Project alongside myself, he comes from the EV transport world, particularly road transport. So I would be keen to see whether he has any kind of what am I trying to say? I'm trying to see whether we can use any of his connections, and it could be new vehicles which are not on the market yet, but can we get some access to trial those in the sector so that we start being kind of at the forefront of discussions, and whether that is around additional payload, whatever that might look like, to make sure that we're being considered by the manufacturers and in the kind of the front of that queue. So this is great feedback, really appreciate it. I will definitely add that to our notes to say that that's a kind of a top concern for yourselves at the moment, and that could be absolutely something. So thank you for that.
So the other thing to note is, and we've had these conversations with manufacturers as well, and I don't know about the other companies on the call, but most of our kit is delivered on 12 and 18 ton trucks. Yeah. And they are coach built specifically for our requirements. So they're all fitted out so that we can pole things on and keep it safe. If we borrowed a vehicle, in inverted commas, they wouldn't work with our racking system, which is all about efficiency and keeping things safe and making sure they don't roll around. But also the crew need to work in a certain way. If you're delivering Amazon boxes, or you're ratcheting things on for a long trip up to wherever, then it might be easier. But for our basically the way our operations work, and I doubt it's dissimilar to most of the bigger companies, the trucks are bespoke to the requirements for our customers.
Sure, no, I think it's a good point. But just to check, I mean, from my experience, please tell me if mine is different. Because I used to work in camera. That the trucks are different, but the trucks are the same, but it's the inside framing and kind of fastenings that are bespoke. So I guess within a trial, because obviously we're looking for funding for this, that could be part of what we do as part of that trial, right? Is ensuring that we have the right framework inside the vehicle, that it works for the sector. So I think it's absolutely a good flag. I would hope that if we were to do this, we could overcome that, because the whole point of the trial would be to make sure that does it work for the industry. So I think it was something we'd need to consult on and bear at the forefront of our minds, that we don't just end up with a vehicle which is a big box, which, as you point out, is not going to work for us.
Yeah, thanks.
I had a couple of things, Lawrence. First of all, Barry, sorry, my O-level physics let me down on that. The battery, 80 kilowatt hours, max output, 22 kilowatt.
Okay, thanks.
So on kind of on batteries, Lawrence, it was kind of a question that came up when I was doing the Albert questionnaire. So Instagrid and the company that we're buying this new battery from, they, for their own purposes, monitor the performance of the battery and how it's used and what's, on which day and blah, 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 blah. But at the moment, that information stays with them. We can, if we buy a battery, we can access it. But what I'm thinking is, what we really want is we want the productions to be able to access that data, either from the battery itself or from some, and I don't know, maybe they can, but at the moment it seems like, because one of the Albert questions is, how do you tell people, basically, how do you tell productions how much power that they're going to use? And I kind of laughed and said, well, you can't. You can tell them the lights that we're giving you for one day do this, but whether or not, we don't know whether they're going to leave them on all night. So in a way, I'm wondering if there's a gap. There may not be. You may already have solved it, but there might be a gap between the data's being collected by the battery manufacturers and what the users have access to.
Yeah, so one of the projects that we've been thinking about is a kind of a large scale industry data collection project with a centralized hub for all the information, specifically around power. So there's a couple of different ideas how we might go about that. One could be that, for example, we spend a year working with X amount of productions across all different, content types, different broadcasts and streamers, et cetera, and we act as a kind of a centralized hub for all the data from the batteries, all the generators, whatever the power source is, and that then becomes kind of open source for the sector to be able to access, to look at what suitable power, what we're actually using. So that is part of what we're thinking about, and I think that could be done as a project by project. But obviously, I think in an ideal world, we'd kind of look to go beyond that and actually say, how do we create a central place where this data starts to automatically be collected, so that we can have that access. So again, I think we've got about 8 different projects at the moment. Obviously, we want to find out which ones feel broadly useful before we start going into real deep details of exactly what we're going to be able to deliver and what we're not going to be able to deliver. But a centralized kind of data collection project is very much one of our kind of key ideas. So I guess that's sounding kind of a little bit related to what you're saying there, and that might be useful.
Yeah, because we already have a tracker on all our vehicles that tells us, it's very new, so I haven't really analyzed it in much detail yet, but it tells us what the carbon produced by each journey of each vehicle is. So, the next step seems to be something on the equipment, that does something similar.
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely, obviously, a lot of the batteries already do have those telematics. I think it is just the point is just about getting access to it that's then available for the sector. And obviously, a lot of the time, this just gets stuck within a single production and then kind of gets forgotten about. So that data is definitely there. I think there's also a piece around working out where that's being used on productions. So rather than just saying this generator used this amount, of us saying, well, for the lighting or for the catering, and actually getting a bit of a kind of a breakdown across the production, so you guys know exactly what those units are doing,
but we won't know what the batteries are doing, because if we give somebody 5 or 10 or 20 batteries and big block batteries, they can charge them up multiple times. The charger won't tell us how much each battery is used on each time. So there is no way to extrapolate that.
It will, as far as I understand it will tell the person that's produced the battery.
Yeah.
It won't tell you as the customer, but it will. The manufacturer does have that information.
So maybe what we want is to have on the charger or on the battery a button that you can press, and then it will tell you, it'll zero it, and then it will tell you how many kilowatt hours have been used since the reset's been. Maybe
just to clarify, Barry, are you talking about kind of quite small, kind of almost like camera or
anything,
small?
Any batteries?
I mean, yeah, I guess, because if we're talking about kind of generator replacement batteries, those do have telematics built in, and I've accessed many of those portals that gives you real minute by minute power usage, daily power usage, peak power, etc. So I think we definitely have that at the kind of medium to large scale. I think you're right for the smallest batteries, and I don't know, for example, things like Instagrids, whether they have that kind of information. I'm not quite sure. They do. Yeah. Okay. So obviously, like camera batteries, don't. It's sorry. Go ahead.
Bebob have been working on this for a good couple of years, so they do know inside. As in, we don't as a customer, but they can pull that data out, and it's something that they're working on to be able to release to their customers. I think they're maybe at the end of this. They're running a bit late, I think, but it is, and if they're working on it, then so are the others, without a doubt.
Really sorry, guys. I'm going to have to leave out. I've got another meeting in 5 minutes. But
that's fine.
Very nice.
Listen, we're right at the end, actually. I think, unless anybody's got anything to add. I was just gonna just jump in and say that we survived this last savage 18 months. So along with all of us, well done. Congratulations, everyone, for surviving. The majority of our vans are now EV hybrids. The EV hybrids that we have are effective in that they are able to do the long distances that we had to have them to do. But interestingly, those ones we found, they only are capable of slow charging. The Bristol EVs are going strongly, but they often need to charge out of the office. And I think, Sally, that's what you've always said, really limited range with EV vans.
Yeah.
The other thing that was also really important, which I did want to mention, is I did have a final really good response from Videndum. Videndum came back to me. They ignored me a few times, and then they came back and they said, you know, we want to work with you. And actually, we've sent a whole bunch of about 8 monitors and wireless systems, which we were ready to put in the bin, to America, and they were able to charge them. So don't assume that because Videndum, Vitek say that these are beyond economic repair. There is actually a route through to making them fix, especially the 703 bolts that were such an issue for us. Just thought I'd mention that. So if anybody has an issue with any manufacturer, you know, let's take this up, send it on behalf of this group. And when they ignore, do what I did last time and send them a whole screenshot of, by the way, all of these people on this email are receiving your email, and that they're all mindful that that your request is being ignored. So that worked last time. Anybody got anything to contribute, to add?
Just on that, actually, on those repairs, has anyone had any issues with aperture and repairs?
Well, their repair system, as far as I know, has been quite poor. But they're looking at setting up a British hub for repair. That was the discussion I had with them, because they've been aware of their limitations.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, listen, thank you very much. I'll call this to an end. I hope the next time we're going to meet, there'll be more people and big smiles with a nice recovery in our industry. So we've got everything to play for. Thanks, everyone.
All right.